I'm Isabel Lohman, the education reporter at Bridge, Michigan. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan news outlet, and we're here. We have questions about absentee ballots, we have questions about the race for the US Senate, and we have questions about how each campaign is pitching itself to older voters. We'll also get to additional questions you have. You can put them in the chat and we'll try our best. Today we have reporters Lauren Gibbons, Jordyn Hermani, and Mike Wilkinson here. If you have other questions that we don't get to, you can go to our website, bridgemi.com, where we have a recap of all our previous shows, as well as additional reader questions. Events like today are possible because of the support of Bridge Michigan members. If you'd like to join this membership community, you can do so. We'll put a link in the chat. We have several reader questions about absentee ballots, so that's where we're going to start, and we'll continue to answer your questions throughout the show. Lauren, last week, Attorney General Dana Nessel announced charges against 4 people for double voting in the August primary. She also announced charges against 3 election clerks. What allegedly happened and what's being done to ensure that it doesn't happen again?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting situation. In the August primary, there were 4 instances where voters cast an absentee ballot and then went to the polls in person and sought to cast another. The Attorney General phrased this as kind of a perfect storm of instances where the voters were motivated to try and vote after they cast an absentee ballot, and 3 election officials locally in St. Clair Shores allowed it to happen, ignoring multiple red flags. And another wrinkle in this case is that Macomb County prosecutor Peter Lucido looked into it after election officials, the county clerk and the St. Clair Shores clerk as well, flagged it to officials. He opted not to prosecute, said it was likely that they were not trying to cast another ballot illegally. He suggested that perhaps they were trying to spoil their absentee ballot at the polls, which is not something that you can do. But he assumed that it was a mistake and not worth pursuing charges. Attorney General Dana Nessel thought differently, and now that case is pending in St. Clair Shores courts.
It's interesting the idea that one thinks it was maybe an accident, the other thinks it was intentional. What should a person do if they want to vote in person, but they already have an absentee ballot?
Yeah, so probably the easiest thing to do if you got an absentee ballot would just be to drop it off at your local clerk's office. You can fill it out there and fill it out, or you can drop it. That said, if you got an absentee ballot, you decide you want to do early in-person voting or voting on election day, you would go, you could either bring the ballot and say, hey, I want to swap this out for an in-person ballot. You can do that. Or if you can't find the ballot, you can tell them and spoil the ballot and then essentially get an in-person cast. Spoiling the ballot would be the technical term for that.
Thanks for that. And Michigan law now requires early voting for at least 9 days. In Detroit, early voting centers open Saturday, October 19th. That's not that soon away, or not that far away. What should our audience know about early voting?
Yeah, I can take that one. So it's pretty much just the same as regular voting. You know, when you go to an early voting site, it's pretty much expected that you can expect the same. The idea is that you're going to complete your ballot there. You'll place it in a secrecy sleeve, and then you're going to deposit it into a voting tabulator. And that is, for instance, in Detroit, I know that you mentioned, it starts early, but for a lot of places, it's 9 days of the early in-person voting. And then that data is sort of stored. And then once election day happens, we will tabulate those once the polls close after 8 p.m.
And we had a reader ask, what's the absentee ballot return rate at this point?
Yeah, so the fun thing is we really don't know at this point. I know Mike has a little more info on this, but yeah, we pretty much will hear from that soon, right, Mike?
Yeah, the state will start giving us like weekly updates of how many by county, how many people have requested a ballot, how many of them have been returned. And the numbers just grow so substantially as we get closer to the election. But that process, that weekly announcement won't come out probably until another week or so. And then we'll be able to compare it to 2020 and 2016, depending on how the state puts it out. But they've been pretty good in the past to let us know. In 2020, obviously, when during the pandemic, those rates were really high.
Thanks for that, Mike. One of the most closely watched races on the ballot is the Senate race between Mike Rogers and Alyssa Slotkin. Lauren, you've been following this race really closely. What's the latest?
Yeah, so I think the big news this week is that they're going to take the debate stage for the first time tomorrow at Wood TV Studios in Grand Rapids. So we'll have more information about how to stream that, and I'll obviously be covering. So that's something to keep an eye out for. In recent weeks, they have both been on the campaign trail doing a ton of events and also seeking out high-profile endorsements, additional funds. So in recent weeks, we saw Mike Rogers got a endorsement from the Michigan Farm Bureau, which is pretty significant among rural voters, and a switch from their previous endorsement of Debbie Stabenow, who had a pretty influential position in the Senate as the Senate Agriculture Committee chair. So she got a lot of support from rural and agricultural industry voters, despite the fact that she's a Democrat. They're a conservative-leaning community. So that was pretty significant on the Rogers side. Slotkin also recently got an endorsement from former President Barack Obama, who is getting more active nationally. He's joining Vice President Harris at some of her upcoming events, but also did weigh in on that Senate race as well. So don't expect that to get any less exciting. We'll be hearing more from the candidates. They'll be out and about this fine state throughout the next couple of weeks here.
For sure. And our website has fact checks about both Slotkin and Rogers, and we're going to continue to follow that race really closely. We had a reader who wanted to know about the polling and financial status of both that race as well as the congressional race between Curtis Hertel and Tom Barrett.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that I'm sure most of you, especially if you're living in a competitive area, are getting plenty of advertisements from not only the campaigns, but also super PACs that are very, very invested in what happens in this election cycle. So that's happening in these competitive congressional races. Like you said, the Tom Barrett Curtis Hertel race is one interesting one. But at the Senate level, we have seen a lot of influence from Republican and Democratic aligned PACs alike, because the Senate's majority could be at stake. Republicans, led by Mitch McConnell, have really been focused on this, pouring a lot of millions of dollars recently into Mike Rogers' campaign ads supporting his candidacy or attacking Slotkin, and vice versa on the Democratic side. Slotkin has also seen a lot of support from Democratic PACs. It's a very competitive election. It's something that Republicans see as a pickup opportunity. Democrats are really trying to hold this seat. So be prepared to see a lot more attack ads as we get closer to the election.
It's kind of wild to me because every time I open up a YouTube video, I'm already seeing an attack ad. So I can't imagine even more. We had another reader who wanted to know how the different candidates are planning to help seniors who still need to work to make ends meet.
Yeah. So, one of the biggest things that we've heard out of Harris is that she's been talking about strengthening Social Security by making quote unquote millionaires and billionaires pay for their fair share in taxes. So the idea there is that they would extend Social Security through payroll taxes for individuals of higher income. On the Trump side, we've seen less official of statements. He is of the belief that a stronger economy will result in a higher Social Security for our seniors, but in the past too, he's made statements where he suggested that he could be open to cutting Social Security benefits. He, however, though, similar to, his abortion related stances earlier this year, he's made those comments and then he's walked them back. So where Trump officially stands is a little more opaque. But the Harris administration is floating on strengthening that through higher taxes on higher earners.
Does she have, let's say Harris gets elected, does she have the votes in Congress to make that happen?
That, remains to be seen, much as with anything in politics. So I hesitate to give a definite yes or no answer on that.
I think the answer on that would be very hard because there's a cap. I mean, a billionaire does not pay Social Security on their $1 billion of income. They only pay to, whatever the limit is now, $180,000, and they only get benefits that are equal to $180,000. So I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be kind of skeptical that you're going to pay more but get the same kind of benefits. So I think that's going to be a real hard sell for sure in the Senate.
Yeah, I think Mike's being much more realistic. I think I was trying to be a little nicer about the prospect.
Sure, sure. I mean, people say all sorts of things on the campaign trail, and if they're elected, of course, we're going to fact check and keep track on if they're actually accomplishing the goals that they set out to do. Mike, we started to get there, but you wrote a story last week that takes a long, hard look at all the different economic factors in Michigan right now. Costs are up, but so are wages. What's one thing that surprised you about your reporting in this topic?
Well, one thing I think perhaps I was fooled myself by all that good economic news we keep hearing. Jobless rate is low. There's so many people have work who want to have work. Inflation is down. But again, you've heard this phrase a million times lately. If you listen to any podcast, two things can be true at the same time, right? So yes, inflation is down. Prices are still high, right? The cost of, bread is up 44% since 2020. Ground beef is up 40% and chicken is up 41%. No one has a raise that big. I mean, at least there's no average. I'm sure some people have had a raise that big, but for the most part, no one has had sustained raises that match that. The median household in Michigan is $2,000 behind where their income was in 2019 compared to 2023. And I think Democrats should be wary to completely pound the drum for how great the economy is without realizing there's real pain out there. People who have really high, childcare costs. They have grocery costs that are high, and they have to pull back. And so two things can be true. Yes, the economy is strong. We had another good jobs report on Friday. I think coming after the previous month, I think people were a little bit surprised. The interest rates are coming down. The Fed just lowered rates. So that's all good news, but there's still pain out there. And the interest rates aren't going to come down fast enough to bring the mortgage down, from the 8% or I should say a little over 7% to the 3% that it was 4 years ago. So I think we got to make sure that everyone understands that a lot of different things are true. And for a lot of people who, the average person has lost some ground. If you're someone who is above average and you have a stack of money that maybe in the bank, you're really happy that you're suddenly able to get some return on your savings. You might do really well in the stock market, but don't be fooled and think that that's everybody because, unfortunately, it's not.
Thanks for that. And Jordyn, Lauren, I'm curious if you all are in the field a lot. What are you hearing about from folks about the economy? Have you heard in the last few days that people are more optimistic because of this jobs report?
Well, I guess I'll start with that. And no, honestly, I've not heard many people mention the jobs report because, I mean, if you think about the average voter, they're concerned with themselves and rightfully so. Obviously, you want the best possible life for you and yourself. But I know, or your family, but I know that when I was speaking with voters the other week in the 10th congressional district, where John James and Carl Marlinga are set to rematch, actually, they faced off in 22. They're back at it again in 24. It's an auto heavy area. It's an auto heavy congressional state. It's actually believed to be one of the highest manufacturing districts, if you ask Republicans, in the entire country. And obviously, it's no secret that we've been seeing a lot of auto layoffs recently or planned auto layoffs. And it's a ripple effect down there, So when people lose their jobs, people who aren't even involved in the auto industry are also concerned with their economic outlook because fewer people in jobs means less money to spend, which goes back to affecting the local economy as well. So obviously, there's data to support that we are doing better, but in lived experiences, a lot of people don't necessarily feel that way, and it is entirely dependent on the field that they live in, the field that they're employed in, as well as the money that they make from that.
It's like the personal is political, right? Lauren, anything to add?
Yeah, I guess I would just say, a lot of candidates in all of these competitive races across Michigan have made economics a huge issue, recognizing that certainly while the national trends may be saying one story, as Mike was alluding to, certainly it is a different picture for a lot of people on the ground who may be struggling or not seeing personal gains from economic changes. So that is just something we're hearing over and over again from voters, but also from candidates themselves. It's a huge issue. What people's views are on the economy, what can be done to make Michigan's economy better for the future is just repeated over and over again.
I want to add that there is a huge partisan divide on how you view the economy. And a lot of it is you want to, if you want your person to win, and you see there's a chance for some negativity, some shade to be thrown, you are going to throw the shade. But one of the polls I looked at recently, people said had really negative views about the economy. It was a really top topic, but yet 57% of the people said their own personal situation was pretty good. So they were satisfied with their financial situation. So I think sometimes people use this as a political cudgel. Bill Clinton famously used it in '92. It's the economy, stupid. So I don't think we should think this is a unique situation. There is some tension in the economy, and the people who want the office that they don't hold are going to use that as much as they can.
Tension in the economy, a good theme. Well, we've got a month left till the election, and Bridge wants to continue to answer your questions. So in the future, if you have a question for us, you can go to our website, bridgemi.com, and submit a question there. If you want to sign up for our free Politics Watch newsletter, that comes out a couple times throughout the week, where we fact check leaders' claims. We go to different rallies, we do a bunch of reporting, and then we talk about it on this show. And we also have an elections tracker and a nonpartisan voter guide. We would love if you would hit the subscribe button on YouTube. We think that's a great place for you to continue to see our work. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back next week.